This is episode 232 of Mitolife Radio. I'm your host, Matt Blackburn, and today I'm interviewing Logan Christopher of Lost Empire Herbs. I've been a fan of Logan's products for many years. I love the quality and all of the different formulations that he creates using high quality tonic herbs. Since I've been on a break from coffee and caffeine, I've been getting back into taking tonic herbs and I feel amazing. So you guys get to join me in my excitement as I interview different experts in this field, such as Logan Christopher. So in this show, we talk about coffee as an herb, whether it's yin or yang, different herbs to mix with coffee to negate its negative side effects. I ask Logan about stinging nettle. He explains the concept of being anti-fragile, the concept of 5 elements and which tastes are associated with each element, which tincture product he megadosed all at once during a move, how to know which mushrooms are toxic when you're foraging in the woods. And then I ask him listener questions, including what are some herbs to strengthen the adrenals and thyroid? Are mushroom blends effective or synergistic, or is it best to take them separately? Do we need to cycle off and on Tongkat Ali? Safe herbs during pregnancy, how to fight hair thinning, and many more. So enjoy the show. Here is Logan Christopher. Okay, Logan Christopher, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, this is going to be really interesting. I've been getting back into Chinese medicine. I've been taking all sorts of herbs for years, mostly from the Ayurvedic side. But I was introduced to your products and your brand, which was formerly known as Superman Herbs, several years ago. Probably, I don't know, 7 years ago.
8 years, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and I loved your pine pollen and Hoshu Wu, and you could just sense the quality and taste the quality in all your products, and appreciate the lab tests and all of that. And so my friends had actually interviewed you on their old podcast years and years ago, and I just thought, why not have you on and talk about herbs? So how did you get interested in this whole topic? I know you have a background in strength training.
Yeah, so I was trying to be a strong man. Among the many things I do, like I'll bend horseshoes, rip decks of cards in half. I pulled a fire truck by my hair, lit a kettlebell on fire, juggled it around my body. So fun stuff like that. And the thing is, I'm not naturally strong or athletic. So as I was pursuing these things, I was looking for an edge wherever I could get them. So this definitely led me deep down the field of health and nutrition, which in turn led to herbalism. For me, when the first times I tried the cordyceps mushroom, I noticed that I had more energy, more endurance for my workout. So from the get-go, I was hooked. And then it was just learning more and more about herbs and eventually bringing them to the people out there and sharing what I've learned along the way.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like your YouTube channel. Do you guys grow some of them? Because I think I saw some people in the garden.
Yeah, so we're as a company, we're not personally growing them, but we do have some close partnerships with farms, especially our US based suppliers. And that is something we'd like to expand more to in the future towards more of like a vertical integration. So we have those really tight relationships so we can do, be showing everything we're doing as far as quality wise and all that. You mentioned we do like independent lab testing. So we have definitely some stricter standards than most. But yeah, just having that from seed or fungus or whatever to the end customer, we want to be able to control and do the best on that entire process.
Were you going out and harvesting herbs yourself, like before you started the company, like foraging for medicinal mushrooms or pine pollen or?
Yeah, that started a little bit before the company. So really it was the mushrooms that kind of drew me into herbalism more than the green leafy plants. In the first place, just something about them grabbed my attention, as seems to be the case of many people these days. It's the interest in fungi is growing astronomically. So I was out there just wildcrafting, finding that I had like turkey tail and artist conch, red belted polypore, different ones in my local ecosystem. And as I continue to learn more about these, also started learning about herbs. So although we aren't growing any for the company itself, I do as just sort of a hobby, and of course making my own tinctures and whatnot, go and wildcraft out in different areas depending on what's available out there.
That's awesome. Yeah, I noticed you have a new product, Stag Swag. I don't know how new it is, but it's new to me. I haven't seen it before. And the combination of deer antler, pine pollen, sustange, hoshu wu, wild yam, and pearl powder. That sounds like a super yang combo.
Yeah, that's a great one. We've had that for a few years now. Unfortunately, out of stock, some problems with suppliers. So we're working kind of a beta test, a new version, but with the same herbs. We wanted to just formulate something around using deer antler, but with some of those sexual supporting herbs, but not making it like far too young. So definitely like the sustange, pine pollen, and deer antler has that, but it is balanced out with the more yin, hoshu wu, and the pearl and yam as well. So it's although it is a yang formula, it is somewhat balanced in its effects. So that one has been popular. And yeah, deer antler's a favorite one of mine. It definitely, like a lot of people note for the hormonal and sexual effects, and formulated there, it's for that. But in more experimentation with it, I've been seeing great results, people, as far as like healing and injuries and pain, sometimes some chronic issues. Deer antler, because it's rich in growth factors, can really go into the body and seem to resolve some things that for whatever reasons get stuck in there. So that's been really cool to work with that.
Yeah, I've seen tremendous benefits in dogs. Like I think that's where the market kind of started, right? Was with pets and people's dogs with inflammation.
Yeah, it's good stuff. We have one. This is only a VIP product right now, and the working name is Renew. So a formula around deer antler, but with turmeric, gotu kola, eucomia, and just a few people we've had try that. That one seems popular. So I look forward to bringing that one out.
That's awesome. Well, you threw that term yang out there, and some people might not know what we're talking about. So could you just kind of explain yin and yang and that concept as it relates to herbalism?
Yeah, absolutely. So everyone's familiar with the yin and yang symbol. You know, you have the circle with the swirls, and usually in black and white. And the idea is there's the oneness, the Tao, that is the whole thing. But then we have the duality in nature, like there's light versus dark, male versus feminine. All these, what really makes reality is often these dualities, right? So yin and yang is one of the like simplest ways of looking at the world and looking at herbalism. Yang being that more like masculine driving force, energizing action type of thing, then yin being more the feminine, the restorative, different aspects along these lines. So there's many herbs that are going to fall into one or more categories. Some actually support both aspects in there, and it's just, again, a very simple way of looking at some of the herbal actions that are out there.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of your brand focuses on the hormonal balancing properties of herbs, and not only for men but also for women, right? Like you have like the Athena formula.
Yeah. So the company was founded, not only my own athletic interest, but I'm partnered with my two brothers in it. And they, although they don't do the strongman thing, they had other things they were into. So we got into this business, honestly, just to like fund our own supply of herbs. Like we started real small on the kitchen table, didn't know what we were doing, but it's grown nicely since those days. So we were just getting herbs that we were interested in. And the herbs that help with athletics are going to very often be those that help with things like hormone function, sexual function that goes along with it. So as we've grown as a company, our main demographic is older men, and we just have a wide variety of herbs that work especially well in that area. But we're not only trying to market to that. So as you said, we have some great stuff for women. Our Athena formula specifically is really great there. And then we have stuff for sleep, cognitive support, all kinds of different aspects as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I noticed on your YouTube, you're actually a mutual friend with Brandon Amalati of Blue Shield, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. He actually worked for us for a period of time.
No way!
He's
wow,
a great guy. Yeah, yeah. It's nice to see what he's done with Blue Shield there.
Yeah, and he has an herbal company that's pretty awesome too. And it's just
Shen Blossom.
Yeah, so kind of context for what brought me back into herbalism, I was kind of overdoing coffee, which is easy to do, but just a couple espresso shots, not throughout the day. I would always eat first, but just kind of start my day with a couple espresso shots and kind of balance it out with some cream and, maple syrup. I did that for a few years, but I feel like it kind of taxed my nervous system. And so that kind of drew me back into herbalism and using reishi and astragalus and Hoshu Wu and these herbs just kind of rebuild. Have you ever experienced that kind of overdoing the stimulants?
Oh, absolutely. So one way to think, people don't think of coffee as an herb, but we absolutely can focus on it. And it's a potent, powerful herb, right? Once you're used to it, you may not feel so much stuff from it, but if you have taken a long break, right, and you have a cup of coffee, you're like, it only takes 2 or 3 to you're like jittering and it's like, whoa, this is way too much, right? So understanding that this is a powerful herb, and that's one of the reasons why it is so popular, because of its effects. So the caffeine, but the different things like antioxidants and a lot of great benefits from there. So yeah, I do enjoy coffee and I take breaks from it from time to time. One thing I like to do is coffee is great to combine with other herbs. And the fact that it is really like a yang herb its caffeine and the effect. So it's kind of driving the force. So if you are balancing it out, like I like to mix Hoshu Wu, maca. Those ones kind of fit the flavor profile of it. Chaga mushroom. Those are some of the herbs that I throw in with the coffee that is going to balance it out a little bit. I mean, you can still overdo coffee even if you add herbs, but it's going to give some of the other effects and just be a good way to put some herbs into the diet.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've been playing around with paraxanthine, which is a breakdown metabolite of caffeine. Guess it's like theophylline, theobromine, and then paraxanthine. But I think 83% of what breaks down from caffeine is paraxanthine, and apparently it has anti-anxiety effects. Whereas a lot of people, specifically myself, as a slow metabolizer, I guess I can get stuck in that caffeine form and then promote anxiety.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting. There's little details with it.
Yeah, I have not played around with that, so I'll have to look that up and give it a shot. But yeah, definitely that is one effect I'll notice for myself, a bit too much anxiety. So that if that is happening, then it's a sign of too much coffee. So time to back off. I just gave myself a multi-week break from it, which was good.
Nice. Is that usually how long you take off? A few weeks?
So one thing that I've been doing with coffee is I'll have it during the work week, then lay off on the weekends. This way I find I don't get addicted to it, where I feel I need it. And then it's giving that little bit of the adrenal reset. And so that's one good way to go. Then also, just every once in a while, if you've been doing it regularly, even with taking those short breaks, giving a longer break, I think it's going to serve the body well. You just realize caffeine is directly stimulating the adrenals to release adrenaline, epinephrine, and other things in there. So if you're just hitting that day in, day out, it's driving the body too much in one direction. So that is something we want to be careful with this herb as well as other herbs and their actions as well.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of sprouted black bean, bean tea, basically, with Job's tears and stuff. And that seems to be helping as a little coffee replacement, getting a lot of those black foods, which apparently help to rebuild, right? Your Shen sorry, Jing.
Jing, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. So I'll mention the 3 treasures. So we talked about yin and yang. That's two lenses at looking at things. Another model from Chinese is the 3 treasures, which is Jing, Qi, and Shen. The best way to think about these is as a candle. The wax itself is the Jing, that is your body, it's your constitution, the DNA, kind of that vital life force. The Qi is the flame, that's your everyday energy. It's what you're using to take action, and you're getting Qi from food and the breath that you breathe in. Then Shen is the light that is cast off from that. Shen is likened to the spirit, and it's your radiance. So this is another model of looking at not only your health in the body, but also the herbs. So some herbs, like you're saying, a lot of the black colored herbs, mucuna, shilajit, chaga, these are going to be supportive of Jing. Coffee itself, it has that dark color, right? So it is tapping into the adrenals, which are associated with the Jing, but again, it can be in a way that can definitely cause you to burn out to tap into your Jing. become exhausted. So I'm be careful with that, but it's working on that same sort of energy. So yeah, this is once again another useful model that is helpful for seeing where the herbs can help you. And ideally, of course, you want to have herbs and different practices that support all three systems here.
That's awesome. Are there herbs that more build chi and then other herbs that build Jing, or are they kind of a mix with most?
There are different herbs that some have like all three treasures or work with two of them. So cordyceps, for instance, is a good Jing and Qi one. So it is really like nourishing the body. It's both yang and yin. Although a lot of people feel the energy from it, it is really kind of restorative at the same time, but it's helping with that like deep essence as well as the everyday energy. Ginseng is a one that most people have heard of, and that's one of the premier qi tonics out there. So that's great for that. It definitely has some Jing aspects to it as well. If we compare that to, say, like Ho Shu Wu, that's not a qi one, just kind of straight Jing. You could say maybe even a little bit of Shen there. Then you have Schisandra, that's a 5 flavor berry. It really works across like every system in the human body. So it's pretty amazing and is considered Jing, Qi, and Shen herb.
I love the taste of Schisandra. If you get the good quality stuff, it's amazing.
Yeah, I got to go to our farm, which unfortunately is no longer there, out in Massachusetts, and get to eat them straight off the vine. It was quite the experience.
Wow. I might try to grow them here. I just set up like a geodesic dome here in the desert. I wonder what conditions they need. I
know goji is a desert one, so that you may have good success with. You may need a bit more moisture for Schisandra.
Makes sense. Yeah, they just dry up. Get Schisandra raisins.
Yeah, but worth a try. You never know. Especially if you like have real good minerals in the soil and everything, you can grow a lot more than just what would normally grow there, right?
Right. Well, I noticed, Logan, you had a video on tobacco. Are you a fellow tobacco enjoyer?
Yes. I use Hoppe from time to time. That's been kind of the main route of administration. I really only got into it when I traveled down to the Amazon in Ecuador, and the way they took it, they would make a tea, like an infusion. They would soak the leaves in water, and then you would snort the water. So quite an interesting experience. The Hoppe powder is a little more convenient and less messy, so that is nice. But tobacco is an amazing herb. Again, it's one that can definitely be overdone, right, and has its addictive qualities. So I don't use that one nearly as much, but it's been a potent ally.
Yeah, I have a book here on tobacco on my bookshelf. I think it's A Cultural History by Ian Gately of tobacco cultivation. But it goes into, like, I guess they used to do like tobacco enemas, which sounds super scary. Like, it sounds deadly.
I've heard of that. I also heard of Cayenne enemas, which sounds, not interested in that one.
Yeah, I enjoy cigars, and and taking breaks from caffeine now it has me wondering about nicotine. And I've never, they always say, like, the popular meme is nicotine is super addictive, tobacco is addictive or whatever. I've never felt that effect. Like, I've never felt like I had to have one. Like, I could easily take a day or a week or a month off, or just forget about it for a time. But I do wonder, nicotine is a kind of a stimulant, right? So maybe it is good to cycle.
Yeah, like coffee, it's very stimulating, of course, working with some different chemicals in some different ways. So it can be really useful. But and it depends on the person. Like, some people are going to find certain substances more addictive than others. For me, I got in a habit every night. I was meditating using Hoppe, and after laying off a little bit, I seemed to have some withdrawal symptoms. So I definitely pushed into like a little bit too much, and that may be because my dad smoked for many years, so maybe epigenetic effects or whatnot, that I was a little bit more sensitive to it. So I make sure to I'm only use it once in a while now.
Right on. I know we're jumping around here. Hopefully that's all right. But I wanted to comment on stinging nettle herbification. I saw a video where you were getting beaten with stinging nettle leaves, and that's actually kind of how I got my start. I studied. I learned about stinging nettle root, and so years ago, I think it was like 10 years ago, I went up in the mountains in like my BMW or whatever, like
Mm-hmm.
picking stinging nettles, and then brought them back and got some Kirkland signature 6 times distilled vodka and just made a
Mm-hmm.
simple tincture.
Yep.
And it seemed to work. I definitely felt the effects, and I let it sit for, I forget what it was, 6 months or something like that.
Yeah. Good long time.
Yeah, but it seems like you have a history with stinging nettles.
Yes. So specifically nettle root is a popular product we have at Lost Empire Herbs. It's most well known as like helping support men's prostate and different effects like BPH in there. Of course, not a doctor, can't cure anything, but a lot of people report positive effects, like especially like urination overnight, frequency of that, ability to like empty completely. It's pretty amazing for that. I'm a bit younger, right? Like I don't have any prostate issues, but I still take nettle root. Occasionally, I really do feel it's a good yin herb compared to some of the other yang ones like the pine pollen and the stronger hormonal action. So nettle root does some hormone action, but it's more like background stuff that's going on versus some of the other ones that are driving specifically like testosterone in a certain direction, which can be kind of useful. So yeah, I've been working with nettle root and occasionally nettle leaf, but one time I was out there and I was sitting with the plant and opening up communication with it, and it just basically challenged me as like, hey, like I'm nettle. You got to try this. You've heard of this, right? So I was like, got to go do that. So I took some nettle home, had my wife whip me with the stinging nettles. And I'll say this, like, if you've been out there and just get like one sting from a nettle, it can hurt really bad. When you get a whole bunch, I mean, it's not pleasant by any stretch of the means, but you're doing it across your body. So it's much more diffuse and you really deplete the histamine in the body. So people have used this for like allergies and arthritis and different pains that they have. Can be really useful there. So did the whipping, and then I sat in the sauna, and it was a good time. I haven't done it since on purpose, but I'd be open to doing it again for sure.
That's interesting that it's less intense. That kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
I spoke with Brandon recently on the phone, and he was saying eventually most of us guys are going to have to deal with some type of prostate issue as we get older.
Yeah.
And so I've been just trying to formulate like a long-term prostate kind of strategy. And it seems like stinging nettle root is a pretty solid one.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably the top herb out there. Saw palmetto is also well known for that, but I've heard quite a few reports of people having like sexual dysfunction as a result of even the herb there. It can reduce 5-alpha reductase, which nettle root may be able to do as well. It's science is always incomplete on many of these herbs, and 5-alpha reductase is what transforms testosterone into DHT, dihydrotestosterone, which is considered like 20 to 40 times as potent as testosterone, really important for sexual health, but also muscle mass. It got implicated in prostate issues as well as male pattern baldness, and it certainly has some issues there, but like so many things, it's the full picture is a lot more complicated than that. So we don't necessarily want to get rid of this. It's actually a very healthy hormone. We just got to have it in the right amounts and right locations, and our receptors working properly.
Mm-hmm. You think maybe microplastics and other things.
Yeah,
like get in the way of
estrogens are a big issue with prostate cancer and BPH. That seems to have big effects as far as docking on the receptors in the prostate. So in our very polluted world with the endocrine disrupting chemicals, that's definitely a big issue.
Yeah, I know the last 3-4 years, especially hot cold therapy has been trending. I just see it on social media, and not to toot my own horn, but I was into that 10 years ago or something. And now that I'm in a hotter climate in the desert where it's like approaching 100 degrees, I'm getting back into cold soaks. Like I just did first one in years a couple days ago. And just 57 degrees, nothing crazy. That's what I read the research. You don't have to go down to 30 degree Fahrenheit, water. But have you done a lot of that because it seems like there's differing kind of detoxification effects. Like even with cold therapy, people don't realize like you're redistributing your vitamin A out of your liver into your fat cells, which has a lot of like amazing hormonal effects.
Yeah. I was just in a cold plunge yesterday. I was at a party that happened to have that. So I was going from the cold plunge to the hot tub, and quite enjoyable. I've I have an infrared sauna at my house, so that's been a regular habit for many years now. I haven't gotten the cold plunge. I'll do like cold showers and, go into bodies of water when possible. But I'd like to get myself a cold plunge tub at some point to do that. The way I like to think about it is that term anti-fragile, which was popularized by Nicholas Taleb, book by the same name. Fantastic stuff, but really just thinking of it in terms of health. Anti-fragile is not just something that isn't going to break, but the stressors make it come back better. So if we are stressing the body with the extremes of cold and hot, of course, not going overboard with these where it's causing damage, but doing it in a certain way, our body is kicking on its homeodynamic processes that allow it to become healthier. So this is just one way that can upregulate the anti-fragility of the body and help with a whole bunch of different functions. We really like to narrow in on, it's doing this one thing, like what you're saying with the vitamin A in the liver. That's really cool, right? But you have to realize there's like 200 different processes that are going to go on from doing one of these things, right? So looking at what effects we want to get, other things like fasting are going to be somewhat similar. Even the herbs like the adaptogens, which are helpful for the stress response, how they're actually working in many cases is the body is getting stressed out by the components that are within the herbs and therefore upregulating how it handles those things. So it's anti-fragile fragility in action with some of the herbs as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know there's like the L. Ron Hubbard nice and flush sauna protocol.
That's right.
Are there have you done like the herbal version of that? Because I know you have like the heat shock protein effect and all these different things. You mentioned there's tons of effects, but I'm sure there's like a herbal synergy little protocol you could do with.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that's going to mimic that niacin flush. So that's something unique. I mean, I suppose you could do some things that are like circulatory stimulants. So doing something like Cayenne, not an enema, wouldn't recommend that. But I've actually been working with a lobelia Cayenne tincture recently. So it's like fire, straight to take that. But lobelia has this relaxing effect while Cayenne has a stimulating effect. So it's a stimulant relaxing at the same time. I really like the feel of that. And that was a famous duo from Samuel Thompson way back, like almost 200 years ago. So doing something like that where you're, internally heating up the body, then going into a sauna, you could have some good effects. And then, doing something like activated charcoal, which is going to bind to some of the toxins that are released internally, not just externally in the sweat. Of course, that's going to be useful, but we could think of some of the herbs with detoxing properties as well. So you could be taking these, maybe like drinking some tea during the sauna would help as well. So I don't have a specific protocol, but you got my gears turning as far as what could be done here as well.
Go ahead.
We were talking about endocrine disrupting chemicals recently, and I've been looking at and seeing more and more research showing different protective effects of the herbs on various endocrine disrupting chemicals. So Tulsi was a herb that we released a tincture of recently, and that is actually like a laundry list of different chemicals that it's protecting against. So again, in our world, can be quite useful to have some of these things.
Wow. And you're talking about synthetic, like man-made chemicals that
Well, heavy metals as well, radiation, but then many, the pesticides, plastics, that sort of thing as well.
Wow. That's really cool. I was going to say you inspired me to get back into cayenne pepper. I don't know if you remember Robert Cassar. He was kind of my introduction to health, and he was selling that years ago. And I was, taking that, and then back in my raw vegan days, I got into the juicing habanero peppers. And I think I almost killed my family parrot because I was juicing it and it was just filling the house with the aroma. But yeah, I don't like spicy things, but I was just watching one of your videos last night, and you did a video on that bitter flavor and how that's been kind of eradicated from Western civilization. And when we take out one whole category of flavors, that has negative effects on our overall health, which I thought was a great point.
Yeah. If you look at any ancient system of herbalism and healing, Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, you're going to have different areas that are really I'll talk about the Chinese model. So you have the 5 elements, water, wood, fire, earth, and metal. And each one of these is associated with different tastes. So water, you have the salty taste. With wood, you have the sour taste, and so on and so forth. But you think about the different tastes of the herbs, you look at any of these systems, the taste clue the body into what that herb is doing. And you can just think of it with bitter, what is causing that bitter flavor, right? It's certain chemical compounds within the herb. So if you do not eat anything that's bitter, this whole swath of different chemical compounds that is out there in the world that can have certain functions in the body is not in your palate, not in your body. And although there are reasons to capsulize herbs for the convenience and whatnot, we're a real capsule society, but you lose something in not tasting the herb. So we've had customers say like they tried our Tongkat capsules and not seeing results with them. Then they try out the powder, and for whatever reason, just the tasting it, and it could be placebo, but hey, if it works, it works, right? They then get the effects of the herb. So I'll mention this for anyone that does take capsules. Again, convenient in most places you're going to find them. Something you can do is just like break open one capsule and sprinkle it into the bottle of capsules. So that way you at least have a faint taste of the herb. With the bitter taste specifically, not every bitter herb is specifically for this, but the bitter taste has a digestive effect, right? So that's why digestive bitters are a thing. So having this is going to start a cascade of things. So having that taste before it gets to digestion can be quite important.
Mm. Yeah, I just saw Dave Asprey made a post where he was taking like 80 pills in a handful. I think you have to mix in some apple cider vinegar with that to have some acid to digest all of those. That's actually a good product idea, right? Like,
yeah.
Take a couple more pills to help digest the other pills.
Right. And it really depends where the person is at. So if they're having like a weak hydrochloric acid in the stomach, they may not be breaking things down, or leaky gut, so all kinds of other issues that may be in play there. Just taking capsules, and we can have like pressed tablets or whatnot. Not everything is going to digest equally for different people. So one thing that's really useful to look at in herbalism or supplements as a whole is what sort of formats work for you. And for a variety of reasons, this may be one thing or another. And sometimes it's particular to the herb itself. For me personally, like I'm a tincture person. I have a couple up there on air. I have tinctures all around my house. I just love the convenience. I can take a squirt of tincture. I can really modulate the dose quite easily. You're getting the taste of it, but then some immediate effect in the body. And I like to think that tinctures are a bit more like energetic, just because it's lower dose than say like a tablespoon of powder, where you're going to get more of the chemical constituents involved. But that's me. Some other people, prefer the powders. They have a good routine with that, or teas. There's a whole bunch of different ways to take herbs, in addition to enemas and suppositories. So you got to find, but the administration can determine a lot, right? Coffee taken orally versus coffee as enema, very different effects in the body. And actually, in some ways, the opposite effects, right? So yeah, you got to look at that too.
Yeah. Yeah, back when I made that nettle tincture, I would take shots of it because I made it myself, so it was affordable to do so. And I noticed you had a video on a megadosing herb, so I'm curious, like at parties or whatever, have you ever just done the whole 2 ounces just down the hatch?
Yes, ashwagandha, it has kind of like a whiskey scotch-like flavor, which is something that I enjoy. So I have on a couple different occasions, like drinking a bottle. I was just going through a very stressful move, so I was drinking a bottle of ashwagandha to help me handle that. I wouldn't normally advocate for that, but it's also something, it's herbs. You can really play with dose, and sometimes there's a linear dose response, right? The more the better. Other times you got a bell-shaped curve, and sometimes like you're going for one effect, and just too much can end up being the opposite effect. I'll never forget the time I was doing some of my herbalism training, and we were going through herbs that have like pain relieving effects and were good for sleep. So we did like one herb after another, and a lot of us were wired that night because it was actually like too much of these things that it had the opposite effect. But during the class itself, I was like just relaxed and enjoying the moment. It was great.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Kind of a random question. I was talking to a doctor on the phone the other day, and I was telling him I was taking reishi, and he said, "Oh, you have to watch out because that lowers testosterone." And I didn't get to, have him expand on that, but I would imagine it's the dose that determines.
Yeah, so I have seen there's a little bit of science, but it was in vitro, so just looking at cells. And I think, again, it was the 5-alpha reductase. So it's actually going to, which is the enzyme that transforms testosterone into DHT. And I believe that Reishi showed amongst the different mushrooms some effect in doing this. I overall wouldn't really worry about it. Again, you got to look at individuals. Some people may be much more sensitive to this sort of issue. But if we look at reishi is one of the best like Shen mushrooms out there, especially wild reishi. It's also considered a qi one, great for the immune system. But it tends to just give people like a more peaceful outlook. So perhaps in people that are like over testosteronized, like quote unquote toxically masculine or something, maybe there is some like ratcheting down of it. And in some cases it could be a useful function, but overall I wouldn't really worry about it. And if you do, then, try a different mushroom. Like I just personally, because I like the flavor, I like chaga mushroom a bit more than reishi, but that's me.
Yeah. I kind of miss. I had a wood stove up north in the cold, and all winter I would just keep a pot on the wood stove going of chaga, and just chunks, and just keep adding water to it for like 5-6 months.
Yeah.
It's the way to do it. I also noticed you have pearl powder on there, and recently I've been adding that to my kind of morning elixir, coffee replacement, whatever you want to call it. Have you ever done that? Like added it to your coffee or?
I don't think I have. I haven't personally tried that, but I can imagine that would work well. Pearl is going to be great for the mineralization that comes from it. And again, it's a good Shen herb. So having that just like kind of subtle calming effect, it's not super strong in that way. But in Chinese medicine, it's been renowned as one of the beauty tonics. So great for the skin, hair, nails, all sorts of stuff like that. And it's great to be used topically as well as taken internally in different ways.
Yeah, for a while I was soaking my mouth in it. I don't know. I hadn't found a study on it or anything, but I was just thinking about the remineralization of the teeth. And I know it's not just calcium. There's phosphorus. There's, I don't know, like 15 minerals in our.
And so I've used it, mixed that with baking soda and used that as a toothbrushing powder.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
It's a pretty simple one that seems to work decently.
Nice. Yeah. I think it has like calcium. Is it calcium binding protein, or has some really interesting compounds in there?
All these herbs have fascinating stuff when we look down on those details.
Yeah. I love it. Well, let's see, Logan, do you want to go into some of the questions that listeners sent in? Because we have quite a few.
Let's go for it.
Dosage for pine pollen, kind of a open-ended question, but
I can talk. So dosage is one of the like most common questions we get. And part of this has to do with our society. Like we're kind of used to like a doctor telling us exactly what to take with something, right? And with pharmaceuticals, like you need to be exact with stuff, right? They have the time and the place. And, it's the old saying, like the difference between the medicine and the poison is the dose. For most of the herbs that we're working with, they're really gentle. We're not working with, in general, like dangerous herbs. There are occasionally some contraindications you have to be aware of. And that's more, certain pharmaceuticals where it'll mismatch with some of the actions going on. But in general, you can really play around with the dose. So pine pollen, I don't remember off the top of the head what our package says, but I think our normal dose is around like a teaspoon a day. And that for many people, like that is going to be useful. But in the early days when we were getting into pine pollen and starting the company, we came across some information that in China, they would use up to 10 grams a day, which is 3 tablespoons of the powder. And really, they saw it more as a food. So they throw it in the flours and they're baking with it. They're using different things like this. So we started playing around with that dose and we called it the mega dose, right? Because it's significantly more than a single teaspoon a day, right? And with this, we saw certain effects and, this is a good dose that works for people. Again, I was saying before, like sometimes more is better, not always. So you got to find what works for you. But if you're playing with an herb and want to see what the effects, double the dose, triple dose, and see what you notice with that. Some herbs are more feelable in their effects than other. With the pine pollen, we have our morning wood guarantee. So specifically that mega dose And with men, however it's working, we have some ideas on the function, but it seems to make that happen more often, right? So for people that need that help, then this is a good protocol to try. Nothing works for everyone, but give it a shot and see how it goes. And really you can, do anything in between that. So do a tablespoon a day, find if that works for you. Some people like to combine the powder along with the tincture as well. They're going to have slightly different actions here. The tincture being a little more directly boosting to the testosterone, while we see the pine pollen powder as kind of supporting it and having a lot more nutrition along with it. So there's no real wrong way to do something. Those are some helpful guidelines, but again, you got to play with it and see what works for you.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up the tincture versus powder, because it's my understanding with the elk, deer antler, elk velvet, whichever, there's a difference with the effects of the powder capsules versus the tincture. So it's good to play around.
Yeah, in some, like a certain extract type is going to work far better than others. I've heard, I don't know if this is true, sometimes, you have to wade between like what is marketing hype versus what is science or what is like herbalism protocol for a long time. But I've heard that the elk or the deer antler is going to be best drawn out with alcohol that's going to get most of the components out compared to a powder. Again, I don't know if that's fully true. What I was saying with the pine pollen, that's pretty good results we've seen consistent across people over time. But there's other herbs like marshmallow. That's great to use in like a cold kind of cold water extraction. You don't do a tincture with that. It just doesn't work out. So different herbs have different properties.
I saw on your one of your blog posts that you posted your before and after testosterone levels. I think you used Inside Tracker, which is funny because I think I bought their package, so I have like 3 or 4. It's like their comprehensive ultimate 50 marker test or whatever. Yeah. And I'm trying to get better at like tracking, metrics in my health. There's a significant boost, right? That you saw.
Yeah, I've used a couple times. My highest testosterone ever was like 992. I haven't tested in a while, so it'd be fun to go back to that. And Inside Tracker is one of many great companies that are out there that I've had fun working with. So yeah, it can be great to see those numbers. And I'm a healthy person, so overall, like most markers are in the optimal. But then you see some that are not, and then a couple in the res. Like, okay, I got to take some actions on these things, right?
Yeah. I think that's the benefit of Inside Tracker. Like I did go to the dentist for like, I don't know, 6 or 7 years and just had these like cavities that were just sitting there. And I'm like, oh, I'm on K2. I'm fine. And then I went to the dentist and it's like, oh, you need fillings. And then lo and behold, my C-reactive protein was sky high. It was like a 10.
Yeah.
And then I got the dental work done and then it dropped down to like normal range. That's really interesting.
Yep. Yeah. That's the tough thing about, life and biology, right? There's so many things going on that actually narrow it down to a single variable can be tough, but yeah, sometimes it can.
Right. Hopefully that's it. Yeah. Someone asked, what are some herbs that we can use to strengthen the thyroid and adrenals?
So thyroid, some of the herbs that are good for that is, depends on the issue. So I'm assuming like hypothyroid, low thyroid function is much more common than hyperthyroid, although many people have issues with that. And this can be from autoimmune conditions. So one, definitely look at diet if that's the case, because diet's always involved in this. Then thyroid is something that is disrupted pretty big from endocrine disrupting chemicals. I have a theory, and I've seen a little bit of evidence towards this, that one of the reason that so many more women are hypothyroid or have thyroid issues than men is the amount of skincare products they use. And makeup and different things like this, many of which, there are good quality versions out there, but most of them are just loaded with chemicals that are going to, in some cases, have directly anti-thyroid effects. So I would take a look at that. But some of the herbs that are good or useful for thyroid, ashwagandha comes to mind. That can be especially useful in cases of hypothyroid. And then lemon balm is another one to look at that. I'm forgetting some of these, sometimes herbs get reputations for like balancing, having a regulating effect on the thyroid. But then some people say, no, it's like boosting in this one direction. So again, you have to see what works for you. But that would be a couple that I would look at right there. As for the adrenals, so this is where the adaptogen class is going to come in. However, I will say this with a bit of warning. Many people get into adaptogens, which are specifically, they're supposed to be herbs that are going to help you adapt better to stress. And we see with the studies that started originally around Russian research was like anti-physical and mental fatigue effects from these. So a lot of people get on these, and it kind of like coffee. I think there's a point of using them too far. But if you're doing them in addition to, like, you don't want to just take adaptogens in order to burn the candle at both ends even further, right? That's just going to cause a worse burnout and exhaustion at some point. But if you're doing some lifestyle changes as well as recovering and having some adaptogens in there, then I think many people are going to benefit from that as well. So here, rhodiola, schizandra, cordyceps, eleuthero or Siberian ginseng. Those are some of the top adaptogens out there that are going to be helpful for the adrenal function.
Awesome. Kind of a question for me. You just made me think of this. Like, I've heard this concept over the years that you can be born with a weak constitution or a strong constitution. Mm-hmm. Like, I just interviewed like a chocolate guy on my podcast that mixes herbs in raw chocolate, and he brought that up. And the people that have a strong constitution, they generally don't have to take any supplements. They can go out and party every weekend, and they don't really see the negative effects. And then people that are born with weak constitution, they generally need to, make their elixirs, take their supplements, have a protocol for health.
Yep.
And do you kind of agree with that concept, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways we could look at it. Just constitution in general, we can look at like different body types, right? So in Ayurveda, you have the three doshas, which isn't like weak to strong constitution, but different balances of the things, and therefore what is going to best take care of one type of person versus the other. But overall, I'd say that is pretty accurate. I mean, clearly some people are born not healthy, or much less so than other people. So in Chinese medicine, this would be termed the prenatal Jing. So what you're getting essentially from your parents, and we can look at this scientifically with epigenetics, right? Based on certain factors in the health of your parents, that's going to pass on to the children, not just in like conception and in the womb, but, breast milk and different things like that as well. And nutrition as you're growing, that's going to set yourself up for life. This is one of the reasons we see much more chronic illness these days, right? Is because the lower quality food, as well as much more toxicity across the world, and now it's like generation after generation. So the epigenetic effects of your parents' toxicity can be passed on. So yeah, these are some different factors to look at. Unfortunately, you got to play with the hand you're dealt with, right? So the good news is that there are things you can do no matter what your constitution is, right? So there are ways you can support it, and you may not be able to be one of those people that doesn't have to do anything and lives to 100 years old, right? That may not be in the plans for you, but you can pick where you're at and go from there.
Can I guess, are you a Pitta Vata like me combination? Or?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So you can generally tell by looking at a person, right?
Yeah, that's one way. So you can look at the physical appearance, but also the psychological function will tell you a lot about it. And in Ayurveda, and again, all ancient systems, these things are tied together versus we think in the West, there's nothing to do with each other, right? How you look has nothing to do with how you think or feel, right?
Right. Yeah, years ago, I haven't seen him for a while, but Jay with the Jing Slingers, we were at a health conference, and he said, our type of dosha prefers like pre-digested food, almost like smoothie consistency, like baby food, like ground beef versus a steak. And I'm like, that's so accurate. Like, I prefer that, because even the raw vegan days, I was into like all the pre-digested, coconut yogurts I'd make at home and all this fermented stuff. It would just feel better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's fascinating study. And I feel that's one thing kind of missing from kind of Western medical looking at things, that there is no constitutional theory. I mean, if we go to the West, back to like the Greeks or different things, like there certainly was a model, but none of it's really around today in modern allopathic medicine. We don't look at constitution. We either think like everyone's an individual or like everyone's the same and therefore should all take the same thing for the same sort of function without really looking at how people can be different in this way. That's the go-between is looking at the constitutional types.
Yeah, I've been kind of in the area of genetics. Like I noticed that's really popular right now in the natural health field on social media, looking at the different single nucleotide polymorphisms and the mutations, and then seeing how you respond to different supplements and herbs. Right. But I find that the 3 doshas is a lot simpler way to think of it than to look into all the little.
I wonder if there's any, that'd be interesting to see if anyone has mapped across, like, do constitutions match up with like certain genetic SNPs and whatnot. I would not be surprised to find that there's some correlation, right?
Me too. Yeah, I would prefer the simplicity of that. Yeah. This is a good question. Are mushroom blends effective or synergistic, or is it best to take them separately?
Yes. Overall, I think they are great to take together. I've heard people say like there's a synergy between them. I haven't seen any like hard scientific evidence for that. But if you just think of, many mushrooms, like mushrooms are most well known for supporting the immune system, though you have different ones coming in different areas. So if you think like this mushroom is going to have these effects, these kind of components that are going to work with these parts of your system, whereas this mushroom, there's going to be some overlap, but it's going to have some of these other components. So you're getting a more wide ranging effect in that way. So yeah, like single mushrooms are great. Like if you want to do that, no problem there. But we have some popular formulas like our mushroom alchemy, which is a spagirically prepared tincture. That's a blend of 7 different mushrooms. That one's great. We're actually just about to release a new one called Mushroom Brain. That is lion's mane mushroom, but also with oyster, cordyceps, and reishi. And there's something special about that blend that I like it more than just lion's mane, which is most well known for the nerve growth factor, the BDNF, those sort of things. That's going to have a little bit of a synergistic effect. And I feel like the cordyceps, just having some of that yang driving energy, just kind of gives it a little bit more of a spark and a kick to it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I'm looking at that one, and I've never heard of artist conch. I've probably seen him in the forest. I just didn't know that's what.
Yeah, that's Ganoderma applanatum. So it's a cousin of reishi. Has the brown top and specifically like a white underneath. It's called artist conch because you can flip it over and you can draw a picture and it's going to stay in there. So people have done some cool artwork with them. It's definitely on the West Coast out there. Not sure of other areas, but that's one I found many, many times.
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen that in the woods. I guess a caveat, would you agree, like, watch out for watered down mushroom blends, which are really popular at like Sprouts and stuff, where there's mycelium and just starch mixed in where you're not getting the full dose.
Yeah, I'd say this is true across all herbs. Like you get what you pay for, and like quality has a range of like not very good up to, good quality stuff. So generally I like to go with like actual mushroom fruiting bodies versus the mycelium grown on grain. That still has some benefits. Like you look at the research out there, like there's definitely benefits to that. However, depending on how it's done, how much of it is actually the mycelium versus you're just getting glucans from the starch, right? And then they're measuring beta glucans when actually half of it comes from the grain. So there is some research showing some stuff along those lines. And, as is the case in most kind of supplements, like a lot of the different mushroom products are coming from just a few different manufacturers out there, and some of which are better than others.
Have you had friends that have tried cultivating any of these medicinal mushrooms like on a log in their backyard if they have the climate for it?
Yeah, I know some people that have done that. It can be, some are a little bit tougher to grow than others, but it's definitely a doable process. I've done a little bit of mushroom growing myself, but not a whole lot.
Oh, cool. Yeah, up north.
I mostly just find them in nature. That's I like hunting for mushrooms.
Right. Was it chanterelles? I think up in Idaho is what we had. Chanterelle mushrooms, I think, and those were pretty expensive. If you bought them at the store. I found lion's mane out in nature one time. I was very excited about that find. Wow.
It was a small one though.
Hard to mistake, right? That's a pretty easy.
Although it can have many different types, there's a variety of different Aranicium in the genus there, but they all are kind of used interchangeably.
None are like super toxic, like into the wild
No.
style.
The good thing to know is like there's only one like tree mushroom that is toxic, and that's the jack-o'-lantern, which glows in the dark, so it's pretty easy to identify. So yeah, definitely do not just randomly pick mushrooms, but if you are going to, at least like ones that grow on trees versus on the ground, you're going to be safer off. And then most of the cases you can't eat these, right? Like you're going to have to make a tea out of them versus something you can just chomp down.
Right. This is a good question. Is there a need to cycle on and off of Tongkat Ali?
Yes. So we recommend that. And the reason for this is, so I like to think of the hormones as a symphony, right? People like to focus on single ones like testosterone, obviously very important for men. With women, you got progesterone, estrogen. Also, testosterone is important. In fact, estrogen and progesterone are important for men. And there's a whole bunch of other ones, androstenedione down and whatnot. So with something like Tongkat, it is somewhat strongly driving in its action of like helping to boost testosterone. So we like to kind of play it safe in recommending some cycling off, just like we were talking about with coffee before, right? Not that you're going to get addicted to it, but the body may get used to it. All the hormones work on feedback systems. So if you have something coming in that is forcing or helping it direct in one way, the hypothalamus may downregulate something else in order to kind of compensate for that action. So by playing this game of musical chairs, by cycling, then it just gives the body an ability to kind of reset to normal and then get that action again. Again, it's not necessary, but yeah, most people are going to find there is some resistance at some point. So we generally recommend like 5 days on, 2 days off. But also you can do like a month on and then take a month off. Different ways of doing it. Again, find what works for you. And that's generally only recommended with the like stronger hormone herbs or stronger herbs that have some sort of driving action in general. Other ones are in general fine to take kind of longer term.
Do you recommend with these like testosterone herbs to take an aromatase inhibitor with it, or?
So some of the herbs like the nettle root is supposed to have some of that aromatase inhibiting action. Tongkat itself is supposed to reduce this. Yeah, you can take some of the other herbs that may have this action. I haven't seen an overwhelming need for it in many cases, but again, it may depend on a different person. So yeah, a lot of people, if they're taking testosterone replacement therapy, because it is such like, oh, you're just dumping this huge amount of testosterone. You're not working with the body as far as upregulating things. So just based off that, a lot of it will get converted by aromatase to estrogen. We don't see that same kind of effect, at least not to that degree with the herbs, but there are some herbs that can help support that.
Interesting. That's really cool that the AI is kind of built into Tongkat. I didn't know that.
Right. I mean, just think with herbs, we're working with the intelligence of nature, and despite all the science and data that we know, we still know like still very little as far as the complexity of biology and how all these things. And if you ever look at a map of like all the molecular actions of these things, it's just overwhelming. It's kind of insane. So to think we can even like really understand how an herb works in a body, like we know 5-10% maybe, and that's of the more well-known herbs, right? There's other ones like pine pollen has almost no science on it as far as looking at the hormone action in humans, but lack of science doesn't mean it's not working. It just hasn't been studied yet.
Yeah, I've heard, I had Cass Ingram on the show a few times before he passed. And I think with a lot of the stuff he wrote about in his book, he's like, I think royal jelly, like up to 10% of it, we don't even know what it is.
Right. Yeah. I mean, most of these herbs have like hundreds of compounds in them. And yeah, there's like the vitamins, minerals, stuff that's quite common. But then we always see like, oh, this is the active constituent. Then we see there's going to be like minor amounts of these, like 6 other compounds that are similar in nature, but it's like, oh no, those aren't important. And we'll take this one and just isolate it and do too much. But really, in general, we're talking about synergy, right? There's a synergy by taking the full kind of complement of what comes along with the herb.
Mm-hmm. What about this one? I need a spruce pollen tincture. How does that compare to pine pollen? I think spruce tastes delicious. I've had that before.
Yeah. I haven't seen any data on that. The best way to find out would be take that, see what results you get with it, then take some of our pine pollen or someone else's pine pollen and see the results you get from that. I wouldn't be surprised to see similar actions in there. One thing to think about is you're working with a pollen, so this is the reproductive or sexual function of the plant, right? And in general, there's a lot of nutrition, a lot of good stuff in reproductive stuffs. For instance, we eat eggs, like that's considered by many people, except vegans, like one of the most perfect foods, right? All kinds of different pollens, but seeds, right? Those are packed full of nutrients because this is the thing that is to start new life. So it may or may not have the similar kind of hormonal compounds, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. And even if it doesn't, it's definitely going to have some good nutrition in it.
Have you ever played with like tree resins or?
Not too much. Like when I'm walking in the forest, I'll see just resin dripping down and I'll eat a little bit of it, but I haven't done too much beyond that.
But they have a really interesting taste.
Yes. I love just the tastes in nature, right? Again, you got to be careful of what you're eating. Understand. All you have to really do is understand like what are the poisonous plants in your area, then you're safe outside of that, right? And then just take like small nibbles of stuff. But yeah, there's just fascinating tastes, and resins are up there.
Are you in like a Pacific Northwest area, like forested region?
Or? So I just moved to Utah. So life has been crazy and led me in a couple different places, but now I'm in Utah, so I get to explore this ecology and see what's around me now.
Similar story. Yeah, just a few months ago in the forest right to the desert, and it's kind of a shock to the system. I don't know how I feel about it yet.
Yeah. Yeah, there's an adjustment for sure.
So this is a controversial one. Safe herbs during pregnancy. I'm sure this is kind of a frequently asked question that you get. And I know you're not a doctor, that disclaimer. But.
Yeah. So the fact is just most herbs haven't been studied, right? So there's almost a like blanket recommendation because it hasn't been studied, don't do it. That is the safest bet, right? Beyond that, you can look at, some, actually like very few herbs have been studied, but you'll see some have a long history of use in pregnancy and or in breastfeeding. So find those herbs that have been recommended for like hundreds and thousands of years, and there you're going to find something that is safe. If you like to push the boundaries, like my brother's wife, when they had their first kid, like she was taking pine pollen, right? So not generally recommended. Like, I'm not going to say you should do that, but babies seem fine. You can definitely look at that. Compared to some of the things they're recommending pregnant women do these days, like I think herb is a lot of a safer bet. And in some cases, it can be helpful with breastfeeding, for instance. There's some herbs. One of my favorite herbal actions is galactagogue. That means an herb that's going to help produce milk, right? So it's just a fun word. And shatavari is one of those. There's quite a few different ones out there. So just understanding that herbs can help support that process like anything else.
That's cool. I haven't heard that term.
Yeah.
This is a fun one. Microdosing psilocybin for depression.
Yeah, a lot of people have reported good results with that as well as other things. So kind of along with everything else we've been talking about here, try it out, see if it works for you. You can probably also combine that with some other herbs that are going to be useful along those similar lines. Psilocybin with lion's mane, that's a really great one just for driving the nerve growth, which may or may not relate directly to depression. St. John's wort comes to mind. That's going to more do with like seasonal affective depression, but actually other types as well. So that one you do have to be careful because it has a MAOI inhibiting effect, which can interact with psilocybin. So definitely want to start very small if you were to do something like that. But yeah, research is just showing that this area of the psychedelic substances has a wide range of effects and can make quite useful changes for people. So all for it. Give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Of course, it's illegal, so I can't recommend it.
Except in Oregon, right? And a few other states now.
Right. Slowly changing.
Right. I feel a high from just the cold therapy or cold plunge for the rest of the day until I go to sleep. I don't know if I'm individual in that, but the effects will last for me like 10 hours easily. It's pretty interesting. So I guess that's the dopamine. So
yeah.
This is a good one. How to fight hair thinning or weakening hair and building thicker, stronger, and denser hair.
Yeah, hair's a tough one. We get a lot of questions on that. This is one where like genetics does seem to play a big role. Some people are susceptible to going bald, other ones are not. If I had a cure for this, I'd be a much richer man than I currently am. The thing is, there is no one thing. So some people very often lack of certain nutrients is going to play a role, and which nutrients, it's kind of a wide variety of different things. Like collagen, a lot of people will report stronger hair taking something like that. Magnesium, a variety of different herbs and materials, and in some cases, like you can do a topical absorption into the area as well as taking stuff internally. One of the herbs we've talked a little bit about, Hoshu Wu, that has a reputation of turning like gray hair back to its natural color. And the crazy thing is that it actually does that for maybe like 5% of people that take it for this function. It doesn't work for the majority of people, but whatever it is, like that herbs works for some people like that. And some people have reported stronger hair from that as well. So there's a few things to look at there. We have a few articles that go into more information over at our website. So be sure to check those out. But that's a couple ideas off the top of my head.
Awesome. Let's see. Is there a difference between foraged herbs and cultivated herbs, or do they have the same or similar effects?
Yeah, it's some difference. One, I mean, we have to just look at soil quality. In general, if you are getting them out in nature, no monocropping has been done there, right? So the soil in general is going to be pretty useful because you just have the ecology in action. Now that may just be kind of natural stuff. If you have someone that's like growing stuff in like a super legit way, like, adding minerals to the soil and whatnot, you may get even better quality from something like that. But it really kind of depends on the herb too. Like, if you want some ashwagandha, you're not, unless you're living in India, you're not going to find that in the wild, right? So it depends on what you're going with. One other factor is there's something to like the kind of the spirit of herbs coming from the wild, that wildness and the energy of that kind of undisturbed location versus like being cultivated. So sometimes that can be useful. So I was saying that with Reishi, like found in the wild, just seems to have more of that Shen effect than a cultivated version. And I would say that's somewhat similar for other herbs as well. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts on that topic.
That makes sense, because maybe old growth forests, like where I was at, there'd be dragonflies and bats and swallows and all these different types of bird song and frequencies that it's
right.
Probably just bathing like 24/7 these things in the wild. And
right.
You have to
you get a wood mushroom that's been there for, in some cases like many years, right? So it's just absorbing that natural energy in all that time. Not that it couldn't do that being grown in some place, but it's a different environment, and environment affects us, right?
Mm-hmm. So someone asked, allergies to bee pollen. It gives me anxiety and numbness in the mouth and throat. I don't think you sell bee products, but I'd imagine you played around with some of the beehive products.
Yeah. Bee pollen gives me scratchiness and irritation in my throat most of the time when I take it. So I that is not one that I do. Every like once in a while I'll try it again. I was like, nope, this doesn't work for me. If that is the case, then you're having some sort of allergic reaction to the pollens in there. So yeah, I would just avoid that. We sell the pine pollen. So some people do have allergies to that. We recommend the first time you take something like that, you try a small amount and see if you have any of those common allergic reactions, like the scratchy throat, watery eyes, sneezing, that sort of thing. A lot of people have allergies to some sort of pollens, but that may not be one or the other, right? So there's a whole bunch of different pollens out there, and sometimes the allergy is more to the molds that can be on the pollens versus the pollens themselves.
Yeah.
It should be an issue with the bee pollen for sure, depending on how it's stored.
Right. Yeah, I put in the chat. I interviewed my friend Victor. He sells like the deuterium depleted water. Victor Sagalovsky. He introduced like raw chocolate to the world. But He imports bee pollen from Greece. It tastes like it melts in your mouth. So I recommend give that a shot, and maybe you'll have a different effect.
I love other bee products. I forget the name of the company, but I got some like mead that was made with royal jelly and some other stuff, and that was quite amazing.
Nice. Yeah. Let's see. How to know that you're getting a good source of herbs?
Yeah, so a few things to look for. One, I would avoid Amazon in general. There's a lot of counterfeiting that goes on there just for supplements in general. If you can avoid it, I know it's convenient, but we should all detach from that beast anyway for other reasons. So I would look at, if you're getting something super cheap, chances are it's not very good quality. So that, you often do get what you pay for. Something that we do is we put our independent lab testing on our website. So we're not only looking at the standard things of the identification, it is what it says it is, which can be a DNA test or chromatography. But then we're looking at heavy metals, and we have stricter standards in most governments than aerobic count, making sure it's not moldy or anything like that. Those are kind of the standard tests that are out there. Many supplement companies, they get the COA from the company, which may or may not be legit, and that's what they have, and they're not even posting it to the website. So they just kind of assume things are good. We also do some other testing. So for instance, like pine pollen, we're looking at like pesticides or glyphosate. It's not on there. I mean, it's coming from nature, but we're verifying that is the case. And with many of the testosterone or sexual herbs, like sometimes these are spiked with Viagra analogs. So you definitely don't want that unless you do, right? So if you're getting something from like a 7-Eleven or a bathroom stall type, like horny goat weed, I would generally avoid that kind of stuff. So those are some of the factors. Then, I'm kind of the face of the company, and we do things like we do tons of education out there, and really like we're not only are me and my brothers, but everyone in the company takes the herbs. Like we believe in this stuff, and we're really doing it. I think there are many supplement companies out there where the owners aren't taking the stuff, which speaks something to the quality. And if you have no clue who the owner is, then it's just a nameless, faceless company out there. Mm-hmm. So those would be a few factors. Then if you're used to an herb, you can kind of look at the taste of it, the smell of it, kind of look at its effects in your bodies. But to do that, you'd have to be sensitive to such things and have some background in doing it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really appreciate the quality that you provide on your site. All the herbs are awesome.
I would also say reviews, right? So you have that third-party proof. We use a third-party site called Trustpilot that collects the reviews, so we don't control over what is put there or not. And I'm really upfront, like nothing works for everyone, so you can try our herbs and it may work for you, it may not. We recommend you like try multiple ones, because sometimes like, Tongkat Ali doesn't work for you, but pine pollen does, right? So we do product exchanges and whatnot, and we offer a year money-back guarantee. You can try the whole bag or bottle, and if it doesn't work for you, you don't have to pay for it, because we're interested in getting people to try these things. And, if it works for them, they'll come back as a customer. So that's why we do that.
That's awesome. Yeah. Right on, Logan. Well, this was fun. Thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground. It was a lot of fun for me too.
Yeah. So lostempireherbs.com.
That's the website.
And check out his YouTube and the blog. There's a lot of information. The YouTube's my favorite. You just have great little 5-minute videos where you talk about a concept that are really cool. So
yeah, we have years and years of content, and I do some deep dive research and connecting the dots and different things. So you'll find a lot of information on the website about the herbs as well as other topics around health.
Yeah. Yeah, you even interviewed John Perkins. I saw him at a music festival I was at years ago.
Yeah, I actually traveled to the Amazon with him. That was, that trip I mentioned. So he's one of the ones that introduced me to snorting liquid tobacco. Good times.
That's awesome. Are you going to restart your podcast? Is it Health Sovereign?
Maybe at some point. My life has been so chaotic, so it's not in the plans right now, but you never know for the future.
Awesome. Well, feel free to use any of my guests. I think you have an awesome show. So
thank you.
But yeah, thanks, Logan. Stick around as we close out the show.
All right.
Well, Logan has me inspired now to go out and harvest some stinging nettles, and I have increased confidence with going and picking mushrooms in the forest. If you want to check out Logan's products, you can go to lostempireherbs.com. Definitely check out their YouTube channel. That's also Lost Empire Herbs. Logan does really awesome 5-minute clips on the benefits of these different herbs and mushrooms like lion's mane, cordyceps, pine pollen, ashwagandha, sustanche. And I just love that they're information based. So it's not just a ton of marketing and barely any information. It is information heavy in teaching you how and why to use these different herbal compounds. My website is matt-blackburn.com. You'll find all of my recommended products there, including Lost Empire Herbs and all the products that I've been enjoying over the years or I'm enjoying currently. I also have my CLF protocol up there that stands for calcification, lipofuscin, and fibrosis. And I aim to update that at least once a year. So I'm coming up on that pretty soon where I want to fine tune it and add some updated information. The last one I updated was particularly the calcification part and added the point that we have normal calcification, but then we have abnormal calcification. And it's the abnormal type that we want to avoid. And I've never seen in any article getting into the nuance of excess vitamin D and vitamin D deficiency, both being a primary cause of calcification. So I've noticed a lot of people that follow my work for several years, they'll come and check in after not seeing my stuff for 6 months to a year, maybe because of Mark Zuckerberg or whatever reason. I'm heavily banned on social media. Most people don't see my stuff, which is why I focus heavily on this podcast because it's a little more difficult to get censored. But I've really come to realize, especially in this past year, that most messaging in the natural health community is extreme. It's this supplement is toxic. There's also this messaging that supplements are not necessary and we can just get everything we need from sunlight and grounding and movement. And all of these perspectives that I see as extreme. And it was a quote by the alchemist, physician, Paracelsus that finally made it click for me. And that is, all things are poison and nothing is without poison. So I don't deny that supplements can cause harm. In fact, that's been a lot of my messaging for the last several years. But I encourage you to look a little deeper into that and ask, how can they cause harm? And that's usually with creating an imbalance. So I've really focused in on vitamin E the last several years and educating people that there is this relationship between polyunsaturated fatty acid intake increasing our requirements for vitamin E. I've looked in a lot of supplement cabinets over the years, well before I had any kind of a following, and I would always notice fish oil. That was one of the staples, I think, because that was just ingrained into so many people. And what I used to say, and what some people would say, is that it's inherently toxic. Now I would add to that, it's toxic if someone is not taking vitamin E to balance it out. Because you see an elderly person with all of these age spots on their body, they've been getting a lot of sun exposure combined with daily doses of fish oil for decades. And you ask them if they've been taking vitamin E, and they say no. I've had these conversations with older people. So the question is, could they get all the benefits of that omega-3 fatty acid supplement without any of the detriments if they just were to take their vitamin E every day with it? My answer to that would be yes, that would be the case. And that goes for a lot of different supplements. So I'm the owner and founder of Mitolife, And the supplements that we carry, it's kind of like a shotgun approach. I look at these as relatively safe. Of course, none of this is medical advice, and always go slow and consult with your physician, etc. But these are generally safe substances to take, especially if someone was, say, megadosing vitamin D during COVID and not balancing it out with vitamin K2, or if they grew up like me and consumed a ton of vegetable oils, seed oils, and created this vitamin E deficiency the first 2-3 decades of their life, and they never even thought about supplementing vitamin E. I offer a mixed tocopherol version now, even without MCT oil. So you can get mostly alpha, which is the most important isomer, because the liver makes a protein specifically for alpha tocopherol, but it also has some gamma tocopherol because they work better together than alpha tocopherol alone. And then there's some beta and some delta tocopherol in there as well. And this is kind of a forgotten supplement. So there are some foundational supplements. I would put my systemic enzymes in there, dissolve it all, vitamin E, vitamin K2, the shilajit. They're all really helpful, especially depending on what your upbringing was like and what diet you were on, what your environment was like. And once you have the foundation down, then you could start playing around with some other things, like a supplement that we just released last week called Encephalon, which is a cognitive support supplement. And it's kind of an open source one. It's the first where I'm doing it like this, where I'm using an ingredient called BrainFit. And it's a microalgae extract produced in France that is demonstrated in 7 preclinical trials to improve cognitive performance, shorten long-term memory, enhance learning, and support the reduction of oxidative stress in brain cells. And what's really cool is it actually completely protects against lipid peroxidation, which is a major cause of brain degeneration and extreme oxidative stress throughout the body. And I mix that with phosphatidylserine from sunflower, not soy, like a lot of other supplements out there, and ginkgo biloba extract. So I'm currently taking 4 capsules a day. On the product page, we recommend starting slow and then building up because a lot of people are sensitive. But I've been feeling incredible from this supplement, especially combined with all the foundational stuff. When you look at the cortisol reducing effects of ginkgo extract and phosphatidylserine, and then you look at the study where their synergy is stronger than either of them alone, and then you add this powerful microalgae extract that has fucoxanthin in it and all of these other really interesting compounds like phycoprostanes, sterols. It has vitamins and minerals in it. It's like a whole food supplement. So I thought that was a perfect combination with these other cognitive support where it's actually lowering the cortisol to allow the brain to switch on and for the frontal lobe to work again. So you can find those at mitolife.co. Check out the YouTube Mitolife Academy. For $15 a month, you get access to 2 videos where I share my latest research or just little tips and tricks that I've learned, and then a live Q&A, usually the last day of every month. So that's it. I'll see you guys next Friday. Stay supercharged.